Hi, today I'm going to talk about the incident that happened at Starbucks. Not so much the incident itself, of which we've all seen the coverage of, the raw footage, the cell phone footage of in that Philadelphia Starbucks. I'm more interested in the reaction to this incident. Because first we have the uproar from pretty much all the major media across the United States. And then secondly, on perhaps the other side of the political spectrum, we have these fake coupons that go out exploiting the place that Starbucks is in, the position they find themselves in. They're compelled to take fake coupons and give away free product. And then third, how does a company that prides itself on progressivism find themselves to be the company that's in the middle of this big racist calamity? So, as most of us know, on April 12th, two young men, I think they're 23 years old, walk into a Philadelphia Starbucks, and before ordering anything, one asks to use the bathroom, and the woman behind the counter says, "It's for paying customers only." They said, "Well, we're just here to meet some people, so we're not going to order anything." So they just go ahead and sit down. Soon after, that same lady walks up to them and says, "Are you guys going to order anything?" And they said no. So they thought when she walked away that they would just continue to sit and wait for their third party who was meeting them there for a real estate business meeting. Well, she went back to work, but she actually called the police saying, "Yes, we've got two men here who aren't buying anything, and they're sitting in the store, and this is for paying customers only, so can you please come remove them?" Well, the police arrive to the surprise of these two guys, and this is when the cell phones start going and recording what happened. The two guys are black, the police officers show up. For 7 minutes of this 8-minute video, it's just conversation, and you can't really make it out, but what apparently they're saying is, "Will you guys go? Will you guys go?" And the guys are refusing to leave. They're like, "No, we're not going to go. We have a right to be here. We're meeting a guy here for a meeting," and so forth. So the 8th minute of the footage is the police saying, "Okay, fine, then stand up. You're under arrest for trespassing." People in the Starbucks, some of them object. The guy who they were supposed to meet there arrives maybe halfway through the video and objects strongly. Nonetheless, the police are following the directives of the institution, the Starbucks, the establishment that called them there, and so they do take the men away. They hold them for, I guess, 9 hours, and they're released. Who knows how long it took for the videos to go up online and proliferate all over the world, or certainly all over the United States. And in not long at all, this story has reached all the major media. So based on the scenario, there's a couple of ways one can interpret it. The men were unfairly targeted, probably because they're black. So what they did by staying there and not listening to the cops was courageous. They were standing their ground, standing up for their rights, demand to be treated equally, and were arrested for doing so. Another interpretation of what happened is, hey, they didn't buy anything. They were asked to. They were told that the bathrooms are for paying customers only, and they refused the police orders. So one could then look at it that way and say, hey, that's a store policy. They didn't listen. This is their own fault. Unfortunately, in the United States today, there's little room for a third option, which is that maybe the guys could have gotten something cheap just to stay there, just to follow the rules of the store. And certainly it's possible that the store manager was freaked out because these guys were black. But this is the United States, where there's not a lot of room for middle ground. So once the stories hit the major media and were all out there and spread like wildfire, the major narrative was that these guys were targeted because of their race. The CEO of Starbucks responded.
I want to begin by offering a personal apology to the two gentlemen who were arrested in our store. What happened and the way that incident escalated and the outcome was nothing but reprehensible.
I saw it on Friday. I couldn't believe it. I was sick to my stomach. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed.
The media, of course, ran with those CEO's words, and that major narrative was what was being sent out across the United States.
They were there for a business meeting when the manager called 911. They wound up leaving the store in handcuffs. Thank you very much for being here. It has been quite a week. And part of it, Dante, you can see that you're talking to the police officer. What were you all saying to one another?
I was just trying to, process the situation to myself at the time, because I'm thinking about my family that I have, my community. So in that moment, I'm trying to process what's going on, because it didn't really hit me what was going on, that it was real, until I'm being double locked and my hands behind my back.
What do you say to some people who say rules are rules, that Starbucks has a policy, you violated that policy, the police asked you repeatedly to leave and you didn't? How do you respond to people who say that?
What I say is, I understand that rules are rules, but what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And that's in any situation, whether it's race involved or anything.
Who hasn't spent 2 minutes waiting in a Starbucks?
2 minutes, and I think when people hear that, and the fact that he called the business person that they were going to meet at 4:45. They got there 10 minutes early. Yes, he asked to use the restroom. He claims that he was never told that you had to leave. He just said that he was told you have to purchase something. But that being said, this is a moment where there has to be change.
Until I watched the video, I didn't know that there would have even been another side to this story, that they were asked to buy something, that they were told that bathrooms are for paying customers only, that they were asked to leave by the cops and refused. I didn't know any of those facts because I just simply saw the headlines and the fact that they were on Good Morning America and the fact that, all of this was being promoted with the undertones that America is a racist country and these guys are victims. That all might be true. I'm not saying that it's not true. What I'm saying is that there's more than just one side of what's happening. And I didn't even know about that other side until I started reading the comments on certain stories. And then there was some alternative media that ran stories that said, hey, wait a minute now.
We don't have the story of Holly, the manager. We don't have any of the tape footage, right? Again, there are 4 cameras in the establishment from what I can see from these pictures that are being sent publicly on social media. And this has been confirmed by a couple of people. And yet the media are running this as though this is a Bull Connor, Jim Crow story. I'm going to explain in a second why this really isn't even that.
If a company has private property, and it works the same way for your house, has private property and they say, I don't want you here anymore, and you don't leave, then they can call the police, and it's the police's duty to remove them from your property. It's that simple. It is so simple, but by God, it is so easy to say, oh, well, police are just racist.
I am sick and tired of liberals using black people and making us look like victims, making us look soft with their liberal dogma. It is disgusting.
If it was racism, then there's still some issues with running with that narrative without any, with reckless abandon. Something that surprisingly exemplified the problem with this narrative being heralded as the one and the momentum of it being carried off into the distance is that there became a vulnerability with this momentum. And a vulnerability was exploited by trolls who wrote fake coupons on Starbucks' behalf saying, hey, anyone who's a person of color comes in and gets a free coffee. These, right-wing or whatever they consider themselves to be, these trolls, they like to congregate on certain parts of the internet, and they like to just watch what happens when their work from behind the computer affects real-life things. And they do it for an ideological cause. They believe that they're messing with people who deserve to be messed with. The coupons were spread all over the internet. They took off, they went viral, and several black people went into Starbucks with this coupon saying, hey, I want my free coffee.
This video is about my experience in the past few days working at Starbucks. Like this past week, after what happened in Philadelphia and everything, my store has had a few incidents involving some people coming in. Yesterday, one of my partners received a phone call from a guy saying that he and his squad were on their way to my location to for their free coffee, and that they would be recording the entire thing. At the end of the conversation, told the barista that she better act right, and proceeded to call her a white bitch. The group of guys did come in and were immediately laughing as they entered the store. And we were all just like, you know, gosh. We immediately just asked them what they wanted. You know, yeah, sure. You know, what would you like? And they all three wanted just iced caramel macchiatos. So we made them. You know, we handed them their coffee. The whole time they were laughing. They were saying, "That's right." You know, but they left.
When you say that the singular issue with race in America, and specifically with blacks, is that everything has been the fault of you being victimized, that explains everything. That explains, you know, why you're not living the life that you want. Then suddenly you're going to feel entitled to get more out of society than maybe you thought before. Like, wow, this is all the fault of someone else? I'm the victim here. I'm entitled to some sort of compensation.
2018. No blacks work here. It's okay if we go to the bathroom? It's okay if we go No, we are inside. We're staying. Come over here. Come over here. Yes. Well, we won't come. I'll send my money here.
Actually, what it causes to happen is then you have footage or you have claims of these inappropriate people mistreating the baristas, these blacks who brought in these coupons and mistreated the baristas. And that's going to cause racists to say, see, told you, these you know, black people, blah, 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 and they'll fill in the blank with their own racist beliefs. The whole thing is just spun out of control. And this is part and parcel with America today, where you have one incident and it becomes this huge, polarizing, no middle ground argument, and no one changes minds. I mean, there might be a few people who do. When the gravitational pull is so strong to each side or the other, it's hard not to go in one camp or the other. So the person who watches that video and thinks, wow, black people really have it tough in this country, might be tempted to run over here to this side. Meanwhile, the barista in that footage I just showed gets treated like dirt by entitled people, and he might go off on the other side. The resolution isn't anywhere closer. Now lastly, I'm going to talk about Starbucks itself. Now, why would Starbucks be the target for this kind of you know, racially charged issue? They have prided themselves. They've gone beyond. They've gone to, people would say, to a fault. They've gone to a degree to address racism and to try to make the world a less racist place.
And one day we were driving by and we see a banner, and that banner says,
Heart Song Church welcomes the Memphis Islamic Center to the neighborhood.
I do think, you know, beyond any sort of like accusations of, you know, one, watch out for advocates, because they're sometimes the worst perpetrators of that which they advocate against, whether it's a pastor who rails against homosexuality, who turns out to be gay himself, or a liberal Hollywood person who says, hey, it's wrong to treat women, you know, feminism, da da da, and they end up being, you know, someone who abuses women. You know, I don't think that that's what's behind Starbucks. Who knows? That maybe they're so out front about their anti-racism that they maybe themselves are racist. There's maybe like a law of attraction where you You attract what you think about, you know, if you want to go kind of supernatural with it. But I think practically what happened is, you know, this incident could have happened anywhere. You could have had a manager who was afraid. They were perhaps overly afraid, inappropriately afraid of two men simply because they're black, call the police, or more strict with them because they're black. I actually have an example of this that happened to myself. I was in a coffee shop in Minneapolis, and it was me and a white friend, and we had just gotten just waters from the water cooler. And then at a table just past us, a small table, there was a black man sitting by himself, and he also just had a water. And the barista walked past us and walked up to him and asked him to leave. Now maybe he'd been there a little while, I mean, who knows, but it looked suspicious to me why she asked him to go, and then she walked by us again and went back to work and never bothered us at all. So I believe that this happens. I do, firmly. Whether this manager was in this independent coffee shop in Minneapolis, or a Starbucks in Philadelphia, or a Dunkin' Donuts someplace, or wherever, you know, that's what happened. What I think put gasoline to this fire was the CEO's response, in that they said, this is all our fault, this is part of America's problem with race, and then the media ran with that, and then the protesters were able to occupy the Starbucks, and Starbucks did nothing to do anything about it, and then they became, and by being so social justice warrior-ish, they were then the targets of the trolls who came out with these coupons, and then they were forced to take them, and I think it was all kind of blown up because of the posturing that they took up to this moment, and then even after this moment. I could envision a situation like this happening, and a CEO saying, look, here are the rules, were they unfairly enforced? I don't know, I'm going to talk to the manager about it. But instead of taking a measured approach like that, they just completely said, oh no, we're so sorry, we're going to close stores, and they went off the deep end. I guess what I'm saying is, whether it's, you know, a company going too far off in one direction, the media going too far off in one direction, trolls coming too far off in another direction, pure racists, of course, having off in their one direction, that there's so little room for middle ground here. My hope is that we can come to a middle ground in this country, and I don't think we're going to be able to rely on companies or government to do that. I think that falls on us as individuals. I wish the media took a more measured response. I wish companies would do the same, but whether they do or whether they don't, we can. And I think that's how we work together, so that we're not radicalized in our own tribes, our own ideological tribes, and we're just a more unified country.